Da 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 da. Dun, 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 dun. Da 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 da.
Hello, everybody. What's your favorite scary movie parody? So, I don't have a Scream mask. I've never owned a Scream mask. I've thought about it over the years, but honestly, it's a bit, I don't know, easy. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun Reviews, and we're talking about a big one. This is a big one. I Know What You Did Last Summer came out after this. It was written before this movie, wasn't sold until after the success of this movie. But this came first, and this changed a lot. This was like for horror movies what Pulp Fiction was. After this movie, everybody was trying to make the next Scream. Everybody wanted a piece of Kevin Williamson. And it changed the lives of the actors, literally. It started a trend. And to me, is one of the biggest movies responsible and also shows how us 90s kids were going to be for the rest of our lives, which is steeped in pop culture. I feel like this movie is one of the ways to point out what we were going to be all about and showing like the things that we have now, right? All the stuff like the throwbacks and the reboots and the shows coming back and movies coming back and things that we just won't let go of. I think Scream from 1996 is a big, at least like I'm saying, is a big reason for a lot of things, and it again shows what us 90s kids were going to be like when we got older. So if you like what we're doing here on the channel, don't forget to hit the like button. If you're not a subscriber, please become a subscriber. Helps with my motivation to make more content for you guys and to try new things. If you're a returning subscriber or somebody who just returns to the channel, welcome back. How you doing? If you're new, welcome to the conversation. It's Halloween Reviews 2021, episode 7? I think this is the 7th one we've done already. And we're talking about 1996 Scream by Wes Craven, written by Kevin Williamson. And again, this movie was a huge part of my life. I was 21 years old when this came out. And my life was fucking horrible. But I still saw every movie that came out. And I saw this movie like a bunch of times. This movie starring Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, Henry Winkler, cameos by people like Blair Underwood and the director himself. This is Scream. And I still love it. I can't remember the last time I saw this. We just watched it for a viewing party, and I literally can't remember the last time I saw this movie. It has to be in my drinking days, somewhere in the last 20 years. But it felt fresh. It felt like it really was. It was one of those movies that after rewatching it, and it had to have been a long time, because it didn't feel like watch. I wasn't looking at my watch, I wasn't like paying attention at the time. I wasn't worried about, because sometimes when you see a movie too many times, you're just kind of just waiting for it to be over, or it just feels like it's so stuck in your head that you just can watch it with your eyes closed. And I probably could have done that if I made myself, but I really enjoyed watching this over again, and I'm excited to eventually talk about the sequels. Next year, I think we're going to probably knock out all the sequels in October just to do that. It's kind of tempting to do more this month, but I've got other films that I want to be talking about after this. But I'm really happy that I chose to talk about Scream. I think if I hadn't watched I Know What You Did Last Summer, we might not be talking about this. But again, Scream, December 20th, 1996. Just really, really dig this movie still. So, I mean, as far as a review goes, right? One of the reasons I like this is that it is longer than your standard horror movie. A lot of horror movies are about 90 minutes, but because this is a lot of character stuff, like this gives you characters that go through things that you need to follow, that have arcs. Most horror movies don't have all that. You don't give a shit about the characters. And just like I Know What You Did Last Summer, script by Kevin Williamson, this has people in it that you follow along that aren't just cliches. They are, right? Because that's what this movie does. They are, but they give them real personalities. And there are some issues. I watch this and I do see some things that I don't particularly like, but it doesn't change my overall entertainment value that I get from this. Like Matthew Lillard as Stu. And to repeat, when I saw this back in the day, I basically thought this was perfect. You know what I mean? What did I fucking I know? Like I was 21 years old. I could, I didn't know shit about shit. But after all these years, I really don't like Matthew Lillard's performance in this. it's so over the top. But back then, I thought Stu was like, especially when you find out the end, and spoilers, if you haven't seen fucking Scream, get on that. Even if you just want to like see something that's part of the zeitgeist or whatever, pop culture, legend, watch this movie, come back and watch this discussion. Like he's way over the top. He's too over the top. There's some way over the top acting. Jamie Kennedy's over the top in this. But this is also the only series of movies, the movies that he's in, that I like Jamie Kennedy. If Jamie Kennedy's career had stopped with the Scream series, I'd still remember him in a good way. Because I feel like Randy, the character of Randy that Jamie Kennedy plays, resonated with me because he was the guy in the movies and so was I. I think that resonated with a lot of people. Was that as nerdy as he was, nerd culture hadn't taken off. He was still looked down upon, and I think a lot of us in the audience could grab onto that. Now, for those of you who need a recap of this plot, so it's been a year since the character of Sydney's mother has died. Sydney, played by Neve Campbell. She's been struggling for a year with her mother's death at the hands of the cameoed Liev Schreiber in this, which I think is hilarious. That like if you didn't know Liev Schreiber at the time, because he was a relative newcomer, he's just a guy on the screen that's getting put away in a police car, and he's the guy who killed Sydney's mother. Now it's a year later, and somebody's going around offing people. And it starts with Drew Barrymore in one of the most iconic death scenes, long beginning death scenes of all time. And getting Drew Barrymore to be in this, even though she's she is not high school age. She's older than all these people, but she brings like that kind of legitimacy. There's a lot of good actors in this. Again, unlike a lot of older movies, older horror that had a lot of unknowns, which is fine. But they were trying new things in the 90s, and they were trying to make stuff that was taken seriously, I think. I mean, it knows what it is, but they took everything that they knew in that and modernized it and brought it into a more self-aware culture. And so you get Drew Barrymore in this as this, she was a star. She's a big fucking star. She doesn't need to do this. So, and she's likable. Everybody, at least at the time, and I still love Drew Barrymore, okay? She is as a person, I think she seems very, very nice and lovely. Maybe she's not, but who knows? I'm going to keep that here and just decide that Drew Barrymore is a really nice person. But, she has that really just all-American girl, despite her past and her problems in real life. But when you see her, she's always smiling, always happy, always full of energy. And so to see this character go through this night of hell, and I do find this death so horrifying, because in a movie filled with pop culture and legitimate comedy and, a tone that is so different, this beginning scene, how it starts out is kind of just a little, it's a, what's your favorite scary movie? And that voice on the phone, which is a real actor playing him. It's voice actor Roger Jackson, who did all of the movies, played the voice on the voice box and over the phone in all the movies. Kind of an unsung hero of that voice that's so cool, calm, relaxed, and then suddenly can turn to I'll gut you like a fish. But at the beginning of it, hi, I just want to talk. What's your favorite movie? Oh, you making popcorn? Oh, I eat popcorn when I go to the movies. Like, it's really unsettling even more. Because, like, if it's your first time watching this, you just hear that voice and it's like, oh, he's just a normal person. Maybe this is just a wrong number. And it's a normal enough voice for somebody on the other end that you believe to, like, oh, I'm just talking to somebody and it's just a silly, wrong number conversation that just goes bad. Now, I'll admit, I had to put myself back in 1995, 96 in my head because, it's 2021, right? This movie is, like 25 years old. This is like the 25th anniversary, isn't it? Yeah. In December, this will be 25 years old. This movie is old enough to drink and rent a car. And more than that, this movie could have had kids by now. So I had to put myself back in that time period where cell phones were phones. The internet was just barely a thing, really. We were online gaming and things like that, wasn't taking off. I mean, this was still, I don't even know if the first PlayStation was out in 96 yet. I think we were all still playing like Nintendo 64 or Super Nintendos. I think we were still playing Super Nintendos back then. So online gaming was more of a PC thing, and I know I'm talking about a lot of things unrelated, but technologically wise, is why I had to take my brain to this. Like, how would this happen, right? Because I like seeing movies that are period pieces made now that are set in these time periods where you have to understand what life was like pre-internet, pre-instant information, where people had fucking landlines. You want to call 911, you had to have like a landline, and this, they do show the computer, being able to use the computer to call 911, which is like a mind-blowing thing to think of back then. And so it was still an innocent time, even though the 90s were like that end of that innocence where things were starting to happen. Technology was making leaps and bounds, and we were becoming more and more, technology was making us more and more close together and already separating us, but it was right at that line where things were about to just pop off, where things were still analog more than digital. VHS was out. DVDs were not. You had Laserdisc, but I didn't really know anybody with a Laserdisc player. You went to the video store. You got tapes. You circulated tapes. You made tapes on your VCR. I still have tapes from forever ago of like old shows and things like that are like worn down. Some of them have like no audio. They've been watched so much. And I know it's like, what does any of this have to do with screens? It's the experience. This is what I felt. This is what we do here on the channel, by the way, if you're new to this. It's like I take all those things that I'm thinking about that makes that this experience made me feel. And this is what I'm feeling. And I'm thinking about these times. I'm thinking about how I had to go back in my head to see how movies like Scream or premises like Scream were possible then. And how people could still kind of get away with things. This was the time when people started filming things, like look at the Rodney King case and everything else. Everybody had a video camera. But cell phones were cell phones. They weren't fucking computers. You had a computer at your house. You used it for a computer. You did your taxes and shit, and you played Oregon fucking Trail. And maybe, if you were lucky and you were rich enough, you were able to play more things. I mean, I know like Sega CD or some shit, right? You had a really good, like, you had a lot of money, you could get like the Sega CD. So Drew Barrymore's character, she's on the landline, right? She just keeps picking up and each call gets worse and worse. And, she's been playing along and it just goes bad and she starts crying. She's scared. She tries to threaten with her boyfriend, which let's give it up to Steve for a second. Nobody ever talks about poor fucking Steve, who's played by Kevin Patrick Wells, who doesn't even have a picture in IMDb, man. Steve, the actor who plays Steve, Kevin Patrick Wells, doesn't even have an IMDb picture. Steve's the first victim in this movie. Well, technically, Maureen Prescott's the first victim in this movie, but, we don't see that. The first person we see die is Steve. And the difference, like with Steve's death and basically everything that happens in I Know What You Did Last Summer, right? Because I thought this was interesting too, was I Know What You Did Last Summer was written first, and it was based off of, like the story was kind of based off of somebody else's book where nobody died in it. We talked about that briefly at the end of the last review. But it was relatively bloodless, and that came after this. So usually when movies are getting popular, they'd be upping the ante. I'm surprised that I Know What You Did Last Summer was so tame when really I thought it would have been more gruesome. But it was also made by a different studio. I Know What You Did Last Summer, I think, was like Columbia Pictures, maybe, I'm thinking, and Mandalay Bay. This was Miramax, and we'll talk about that in a second. Maybe we should, well, once we get past the Drew Barrymore part, we can talk about the Miramax thing. But I'm losing track in my head. Okay, so yeah, poor fucking Steve, right? There's a really great, self-awareness in this movie, and it starts right away where there's that joke about the Nightmare on Elm Street sequel sucking. Wes Craven, the director of this, being the guy who made the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, some of them anyway. Again, landlines. Well, they eventually come for her, and the killer comes for her in the house, and it's really intense. Another thing that's interesting about this is the killer isn't all powerful. Like Michael Myers feels like an unstoppable force. Jason Voorhees is fucking droopy, right? Again, you run away, you turn around, he's right behind you. You ran a million miles, you open the door, he's standing there in front of you. The guy is basically a teleporter who's invincible, and he can do whatever he needs for the plot to kill you. It doesn't matter. These guys, and Freddy Krueger, he's practically immortal too. He gets you in his dreams, and you got to find some convoluted way to pull him, and fight him either on his turf and kill him there, or pull him into our world. There's all sorts of fucking shit. These are just people, and they can be hurt. They get knocked down. They're not, you know, impossible to beat. They take their lumps. It feels more real. And in a way, that's what makes it kind of scary, is that these are flesh and blood people doing this to other people. And when they kill Casey, I still get upset, kind of. Because first off, you got a good actor, but they don't shy away from the absolute terror that she's in. And I'm not kidding about this. Like if you've watched 100 horror movies, you've seen so many deaths that are just done and over with, and people's heads go flying, and there's basically no emotion to it at all. But these movies have emotion and weight to a lot of the deaths. And when you're first, like, poor Steve, but like when your main death in this is this poor girl who just wanted to watch a fucking movie with her boyfriend and eat some popcorn, is interrupted by some psychopath we don't know the reason. And her pain, you feel it. You see it. The blood and the stabs feel powerful and violent, really violent. And I mean, it's just a knife. I mean, there's a lot of things that like are over the top kills and things. Like I've mentioned, like people getting their heads cut off or blown up or eyes popped out or whatever. This is just somebody getting stabbed. And it is sad and distressing and anxiety filling, and her noises that she's making and how she can't yell out to her parents. And that's the other thing. We know that they're right there and she is helpless. Now, again, the script does it this way. You know, she should have just tore ass across that fucking cornfield, okay? We all know it. Like, it's what, like, Sydney says about the whole thing. Like, you know, she should be running out the front fucking door. She should have just been tearing ass as soon as she saw her parents' car. But then you don't have a movie, right? So when he stabs her, though, for that first time, when she's running, and it made me think of Sarah Michelle Gellar's death in I Know What You Did Last Summer. She's almost there. She's almost safe. And the way that they slow it down and they just show the knife go in. And then, you know, she's still fighting. And she can't talk when she's like, Mom. I feel it. It hurts. It's just, I get upset. I'm upset just talking about it because it feels like you really saw somebody die. And they're getting dragged across the ground, and even though she sees who the killer is, they don't have to keep showing the stabs to like make you feel something about it. And then when the parents come home and they can hear her on the phone being disemboweled and hung on the swing, that's how you, like, as distressing as it all is, it works. You are fucking invested at this point. If you're not, you're not. This isn't for everybody. None of these things. Nothing is for everyone. But if you're into this, you are locked into this. And you are going to be glued to the fucking TV screen or the movie screen or however you saw it. As the mom just screams bloody murder. That's a fucking beginning to a movie, man. That is just iconic. And I'm not, I'm going to a horror con in October. I don't even know when this actual video will come out this month of October. I might be just about ready to go to this horror con down in Champaign, Illinois. And I'm not the biggest horror movie fan. I am a fan of good movies, period. Whatever genre they are. And this one is one of those that I'm glad to be talking about and it just happens to be in the like horror genre. Even though I also maintain like I Know What You Did Last Summer, it's more than that, and we all know it is. It's more. It's a genre. It's a kind of a genre redefining movie because it covers in so many different categories. But you're gonna find it in the horror section still because of all that. And so now, after that scene, right, we do need to talk about some other stuff. So at the beginning of this movie, right, you see the Miramax logo. And again, this is my review. This is how you don't want to hear about this. Just skip ahead. But like, I used to get really excited whenever a new Miramax movie was coming out because I associated Miramax with just really good quality entertainment, really good movies. The Tarantino's, like anytime I saw Miramax, I thought of Pulp Fiction. I thought about Four Rooms. I thought, like Good Will Hunting. There was a bunch of movies that came out under that production company that was always, to me, synonymous with quality. And now, not so, not to say not so much is an understatement because the man running it, one of the men running it, was a fucking monster, a warthog from hell. And it's to not mention what happened to Rose McGowan, who was in this. And all, when she first appeared on screen, especially, I kept thinking about what fucking hell that poor girl, at the time had gone through and was going through. You see this character on screen, you don't see Rose McGowan. You know what I mean? She's not. She's not. Again, I always go back to Meryl Streep. She's not Meryl Streep, but she's a pretty decent actress. And when I think about how people have to compartmentalize things so that they can do their job, and I think about how she's making movies for the studio of the man who assaulted her, and how a lot of those movies were based around her sexuality. I'm not blind. I'm not going to deny that Rose McGowan is like very attractive. But when you hear about this stuff, suddenly, I'm looking at her and I want to just go, oh, she's the pretty one with the stereotypical big-boobed girl who dies in a horror movie. All I kept thinking about was, what's going on in her head when they yell cut? Is Harvey Weinstein there? How many times did he tell her to be in this movie for his production company where she was going to have to be completely nude and do crazy sex scenes? Because she was naked in a lot of Miramax movies. And when you got Harvey on your side, right, and he's supposed to be controlling your careers and making your careers and making people famous, and you saw so many other people get famous around this time that blew up as huge stars for Miramax. She's stayed at this one level. Yeah, she got Charmed. She was on that for a good long time. She got away from the Miramax stuff and was able to be on that show for a long time. And she did other movies. She did Planet Terror, which was another Tarantino movie, and was a Tarantino movie, and that was all based out of, I still think, Miramax at the time. But I'd be lying if I said that I see this movie and I see that logo and I see that poor girl in this movie and who she was then, right? Because she wouldn't want to be probably seen as like, she probably, if she were to watch this review, she probably wouldn't like it as I'm calling her this poor girl or whatever. Maybe, I don't mean any disrespect to her at all by referring to her like that, but it did kind of put a pall on my viewing of it a little bit. And I had to try to I'm doing a review of Scream. I'm not just talking about Miramax and the fucking horror show that was going on behind the scenes there. But that's my, what I'm going to talk, that's the end of that part of this review. And for anybody who didn't appreciate that, sorry, this is fucking my channel and I will talk about the difficult stuff and everything surrounding it and how it makes me feel. And that's how watching Scream this time made me feel. So to get back into it, let's talk about some of our other characters, right? We got Billy Loomis, played by Skeet Ulrich. Now, him and Stu, played by Matthew Lillard, again, spoilers, are our killers. I've never really gotten into Skeet Ulrich, even though I kind of still have hair like his. But I can promise you this: this look that I have, and here we go, me embarrassing myself, my honesty to a fault, is more based on Christian Slater from Cuffs, okay? And some people are like, what the fuck is Cuffs? Cuffs was a Christian Slater movie from back in the day where when he came out, there was a frame that he came walking out of, and his hair was coming up and like in front of his head and stuff. And I went, I want that hair so bad. Because at the time I was being, since I was a Jehovah's Witness, I had to have the like fucking Hitler youth cut. You know what I'm talking about. So I had people controlling my haircuts. And so when I was able to get out on my own, I was like, I'm growing my hair. I'm going to have a hairdo. It's why I still have hair now and I don't do it high and tight like the rest of these fucking redneck hillbillies I live around. So, but I never got into segue back to Skeet Ulrich, right? I never got into Skeet Ulrich that much. I remember he was in there, As Good as It Gets, and he was on that show Jericho. And he also made the rounds, I think, in like Miramax. I think he was in that movie. Was he in Phantoms? Phantoms like a motherfucker. I never really got into him. And so what happens to him in this movie was always just like I really liked what happened to him in this movie. Because he was just, if you really look at it, he's a fucking dick. He's a fucking asshole. Why was, and the thing is, it tracks because girls go out with fucking assholes. Especially in high school. Then they marry him. Then they're stuck with assholes for the rest of their life until they finally divorce him. And then, But he's a fucking scumbag. Right from jump. I mean, first off, it's obvious he's the killer. It's almost obvious that he's telegraphing how much of a killer he is through the whole movie. Him and Stu. Like at that scene around the fountain at the near the beginning of the movie, after the first high school scene and everything, and they're out in the quad, and he's like, I didn't kill nobody, and Skeet Ulrich looks at him with the eyes like shut up, motherfucker. Gives him those eyes like nobody said you did, man. Shut the fuck up is what he's saying with those eyes, like making it real obvious, and Stu's just an idiot. So it's like, good Lord. I don't know what 1996 me thought, but good Lord, are they the killers right off the bat? This happens more than once in the film where him and Stu share looks. And it's just so obvious. And I mean, he literally is kind of saying like the whole time. Oh, I think it's the second time is like when Sidney sees him after he's been let go from the cops, and he's just like, there's a look in his eye when he says like, I didn't do it, and it's like, you totally did do it. You look guilty, and not like that kind of like, I'm guilty of something else. No, like specifically, you are guilty of everything that she thinks you are. Now that's not his fault. I mean, but I don't know if how much of this is his fault, but like, if any of that's his performance. But we also got Courtney Cox in this as Gail Weathers, who, it's perfect casting. This might be the most perfect casting in the entire movie. And what I think is funny is that she wanted to do this because she wanted to play somebody different than Monica on Friends. And all I could think was, are you really? Are you really different than Monica on Friends? Because, and I love Friends. Not as much as some people, but I think Friends is one of the most well-written sitcoms of any generation. I think it's laugh out loud funny. But Monica was always my least, I think Phoebe's actually my least favorite friend. But Monica, for a long time, I did not like. I always felt like she was just too like. She reminded me of the some of her character traits reminded me of Danny Tanner, the like OCD kind of cleaning and things like that. But she just seemed kind of just, I don't know, just real uptight. And I understand why the character was this way. I'm just saying that I just didn't really like her character. And I was like thinking, are you, are you really that different? I mean, there's different jobs and stuff, but like there's a drive to Gale Weathers that I see in Monica. And I'm like, I don't really know how much different you are, in my opinion. My stupid fucking opinion, okay? Before anybody leaps down my throat, you are free to believe whatever you want on this. But I thought it was perfect casting because she didn't have to really stretch that much to become Gale Weathers, in my opinion. And I love it because she's so sleaze. She's so sleaze, and she's so ready to use anyone in this movie. And you go, well, why is that attractive? And it's like, because you need good, like a foil. I consider her almost a villain in this. She pushes and drives things and makes things more difficult for our main character. She's dredging up things to make her more stressed out. And she does it with a smile and this thought in her face of like, what does this do for me? She's capitalizing on the dirt, death, and murder. And she's happy about it, thinking about awards and books and everything else. And somewhere way deep down inside Gale Weathers, maybe not too far deep, but she's definitely locked the door on her for a while, that there's a good person inside that will do the right thing. But I feel like the only reason she does the right thing is because she's not a murderer. You know, do I think of her as the kind of character who would run back in to save everybody? Here's the thing. I think she is because she's pissed. Because it happened to her. Was a potential victim. These people tried to take her out. She's coming back for them. She's also there for the fucking story. I think every beat in her head, even when she's got the gun on them at the end, is like, I can't wait to put this on fucking TV. What a story. Me stopping two killers. She's great. David Arquette, who does not get his due still to this day, is great as Deputy Dewey. I mean, he's literally like supposed to be like a joke character, and so many things are at his expense. But he's a really earnest character. Nobody does take him seriously. There's no real reason not to take him seriously. They portray him that way as kind of this goofy innocent who's never seen anything. They live in a place where hardly anything happens except for the death of Maureen Prescott, but that got solved. So otherwise, it's a pretty quiet community. So why wouldn't he be a little Barney Fife-ish, you know? And he plays it great, you know, and he's just the type of character that Gale Weathers would attach her parasitic character to. And then somewhere in this, they start to develop feeling. They don't start. I mean, it kind of happens a little fast, but they do have chemistry, and it shows. And then it showed after the fact where they got married in real life, and they're still friends, I think, even after they split up. So this movie brought these two people together. And I mean, I remember everybody talking about it for years. It went on for years because they made movies one after the other with each other in this series, you know, and it was just always nice to see David and Courtney in a movie together. Now, Rose McGowan, again, I think she was great in this. All the way up to her death, where I was like, I liked her. There was a scene where she's sitting on the bed and her eyes are like, ooh, I knew Billy was going to have a problem. Like, he could too perfect and her eyes are a little too goofy. It's a little too goofy of a performance in that scene. Other than that, I like her. She's the girl that's like, why is she even going out with Stu? Yeah, she's the blonde with the big boobs, but she's got some brains in her head too. And she's sassy. Who doesn't like sassy? She doesn't take no shit. She, you know, her and her dynamic between her and Dewey as brother and sister is perfect brother and sister stuff. I like her. She's not just somebody you don't want to see this character hurt. And like I said, like it's one of the differences in Williamson's scripts and stuff, and the scripts from these '90s movies is that you actually like the people in these movies. Not all of them, but in those other movies, you barely like anybody. A lot of times, you don't even like the fucking main character. In a lot of those movies, people were just waiting for everyone to die and just see how everybody died. In this series, it became quickly that no one wanted anyone to die. Think about how you feel when you watch these, like when you first saw them. For those of you old enough to have seen these in the theater, right? And if you've only seen them on VHS or DVD or Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray or on a projector on the side of your fucking house, I don't know. But you watch them and everybody was always like, oh my God, I don't want so-and-so to die. Oh my God, I don't want so-and-so to die. La, 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 la. And when they did, it was devastating. Because as the series goes on, right, there are red shirts. There are people thrown in there, because, we to die instead of our main characters. But like Sydney and Dewey and Gail and Randy and everybody else, like and even the ones who did die and like this, like Tatum and Henry Winkler. I mean, come on. Hang on a second. So anyway, like I said, we didn't want anybody to die. Like Tatum's death is even, she died because her boobs were too big to get through the cat door. Ha ha ha. But again, like she hits the guy a whole lot of times before she goes down, and they say that she was killed, right? That she was killed in this movie because if she's alive, her character would stop Sydney from sleeping with Billy. That scene needed to happen to have the de-virginizing of the final girl, which would mean she's on the chopping block because you can't have sex in a scary movie. Because I would have, kept Tatum alive. I would have kept it where maybe you think she's dead, and I don't mean from the garage. Like maybe really look like she died and come back in the third reel. But she didn't. Okay, so moving on to Henry Winkler's character, the principal. And I'd be remiss if I didn't show this. And I'm sorry, nephew, I'm showing a picture of you. We met Henry Winkler at Wizard World. He was very nice to my nephew. He was very nice to my nephew. I was so excited to meet the Fonz. It was not the same experience for me as it was for him. But Henry Winkler's fucking cool, man. And seeing him in this, like even back then in 96, I mean, Happy Days had been gone a long time. And all of a sudden he just shows up in this movie. It was like, what is the Fonz doing in this? And when he goes after the kids with the scissors, I was just like, this is how cool he is. And he's saying shit that I was thinking about the desensitized nature of the kids today. Yes, I was 21 and I was thinking about this because I didn't like, I always grew up not really liking other kids. Probably because I was bullied mercilessly by these kind of kids. But when he's like flashing around the scissors, I thought this was great. And yeah, he dies, but they say that in the closet, and that move that he makes with the mirror, that the Fonz jacket was hanging there in the closet. This is also where you get the cameo from the director, Wes Craven, who's dressed as Freddy Krueger. And he's like, you goddamn little shits. And he's like, whoa. And he's like, not you, Fred. So this also has, let's see, her using the phone to call 911. Which was pretty freaking amazing. And to go back to Billy, I need to go back to Billy here. And I'm sorry, I do have notes and I'm all over the place. And this is probably the longest I've talked about any of our movies. That's how big this movie is. That's how much I have to say about Scream. Billy as a character, like I said, he's a big dick. Probably has a little one. His whole thing about and his motive, right? So let's break him down, right? Billy's doing all of this, which I also think Stu had no idea of. If you listen to him tell his motive to Sydney in front of Stu, the look on Stu's face is, this is all news to me. He really looks like he didn't know the full story of Billy's motive and plans. Sydney's mom apparently slept around. And one of those people was Billy's dad. And the affair with Billy's dad was so bad that her mother left and abandoned him. And that just fucked him up so bad that he blamed Maureen and became a psychopathic killer. What a... Now, saying... I just feel like it's a major leap. We don't see any of Billy's upbringing. Why did this turn him into a psychopathic monster who obsessed, like, because he watched so many movies and learned how to do all this from watching movies? You know, as he says, don't blame the movies. Movies make killers more creative. But he kills Sydney's mother, frames it on poor Liev Schreiber's Cottonweary, and then waits a year. And then he decides to date. He's dating her while he's going to murder her mother the whole time. So he's fooling around with her, you know, talking about how we used to have on our way to an NC-17 relationship. Then he kills her mother. Then a year later, I feel like he's legitimately asking, why haven't we had sex yet? And you wonder why she's putting up with this. You know, oh, he's sticking around for me. He's literally throughout the entire movie talking about how you need to get over it. My mom, you know, when my mom left, and she has to remind him, your mom left. She didn't fucking die, you dick. And yet they still write her to sleep with this guy. And I'm not saying that women haven't made these kind of mistakes with men. I just don't know. Like, one of the things I can really not buy is just how she still keeps wanting to please this scumbag. And maybe that's just me being naive. But through the entire thing, if you come to the conclusion in your head so quickly that your boyfriend could probably be the killer when he comes over and the cell phone drops out of his pocket, right? You're going to sleep with that guy? I don't know. But I kept saying, like, my mom is dead, asshole. Stop trying to get in my pants. And he even says a saying that I hate. I hate this saying. When at the beginning, when he's like, oh, I was only half serious about that, about the, you know, the having sex right now. Half serious means that you are serious. You just want to appear less serious about it. You're actually bothered by this. You're bothered that she's not going to fuck you. But you're only half serious about it? Does that mean if you were full serious, you'd what, rape her? Like, it's a stupid thing to say. And even when I say it, I catch myself saying, oh, I don't really mean I'm only half serious about that. I'm like, shut the fuck up, Rob. How are you half serious about something? You either are or you're not. And I mean, if you can, I guess you can be half serious, but you just don't fucking say it out loud. It just sounds so fucking stupid. The things I focus on. There's a funny line when she's like, Jesus Christ, come over here. And he's like, that's Gail Weathers to her cameraman, Kenny, who is played wonderfully. A wonderful W. Earl Brown, who has been in a ton of things like Deadwood. There's Something About Mary. He was the baseball guy, if you see my baseball. But W. Earl Brown is a fantastic actor as Kenny, the ill-fated cameraman. And yeah, she's like, Jesus Christ, come over here. And he's like, My name's not Jesus. When he said that, that is a line that has been stuck in my head, and I forgot where that line had come from. Every once in a while when somebody says something, I'll be like, my name's not blah, blah, blah. Linda Blair does have a cameo in this from The Exorcist. She plays one of the reporters wanting to know what's really going on. Randy is the one who calls it. Randy, right off the bat, at the video store, before the party, sees Billy at the video store and just is like, it's the kid. He's the killer. He's obviously the killer. He's breaking all the rules. And he just like calls it. And then they surround him and they bully him. Wouldn't you be the, your movie-addled brain? You did it, like trying to blame the nerd. And he throws it back in their face like, yeah, you're right. I would be the prime suspect for this movie if this was a movie. But I didn't, because I'm not I'm the red herring. Same as he calls the father. It's a red herring. He's going to show up later on in the third act like with nothing. Randy knew all of this. He followed the rules. He knows the rules. And that rule scene is pretty iconic too, of like talking about what you do and you don't do, about the sin factor, which is still a prevalent thing, I think, but done more as like to like the tried and true way of making a horror film, which is the sin factor, which was made mostly because of morality back in the 70s and 80s, where it was like, drinking and drugs and sex before marriage and all the things that were these puritanical, patriarchal bullshit that was, making sure that, all the things that they did when they were kids, they don't want their kids to do. It's all just hypocritical bullshit. And they still follow these horror tropes to this day. I just don't think they know any other way to do it. So they just still follow that mode, which is why I like movies like this that show that the true, like they show you the rules, and then they show you how you can break them. And now you don't have to make every movie like they did way back then. Another cool thing that I liked was the 30-second delay on the camera that they have, where you're watching something and then you find out that it's like something that's already happened, and it's how the driver Kenny, the cameraman Kenny, gets killed. And let's just talk about the ending. So, because we've gone on for a really long time. But when she's trapped in the police car, right? And she finally gets out and she's running to the house, and there's Randy. Oh my God, so-and-so, I think Stu killed his girlfriend. I just found Tatum. I think she's dead and he did it. And Stu comes running up and he killed her. And they're both trying to blame each other about who what. And she's just standing there with the gun and she's like, fuck you both. So in that respect, we got to talk about Sydney, because we haven't really talked about her. Sydney is what I love to see things change, where there's always the final girl. But a lot of them just kind of stumble their way through things. They're not confident. And even though she makes tons of mistakes along the way, she's also not afraid. She's been through a lot, and she's able to take things on. Even when faced with death, she's not crying, like she's not like just sitting in a corner, crying her eyes out. She's taking all the information in. She's waiting for her moment. She's waiting for an opening. When she's first faced with this and she's like got her finger up her nose, she's calling them out. She's calling them out on their bullshit. She doesn't just sit there and lie, even though she takes her hits. She knew enough to close the door in her room to block the door. She called 911. She runs for the exits instead of staying in the house. Or trying to stay in the house. There's that scene where it's like, just throw something through the window and go. But when she's able to turn the tables on these guys, she really turns the tables on these guys. She sees them for what they are, which is just a bunch of fucking scared little boys who were threatened by females. Billy wanted to take power back. Billy was pissed off about a lot of things, and he's blaming women. keeps calling her bitch, 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 you whore, you slut. Even though the whole time he's trying to get her to fuck him. And then you got Stu, who's a fucking dipshit who like literally tells like what his real motive is, right? And he's like, peer pressure, man. So when she turns the tables on these guys and fucking drops a TV on Stu and stabs Billy in the chest twice with a umbrella, and then shoots him in the fucking head when they say, oh, he's going to come back. And she's like, not in my movie. And she blows him away. Now that twist, when you find out that it's both of them, and, it was a twist at the time. It did come out of kind of nowhere. It's easy to say 25 years later, oh, all this and that and the other is obvious. I'm sure there's people who watch this and don't know, but I've had 25 years to sit on this and look at it and study it. And when I see certain things, it's like, oh, that's obvious. This is obvious, blah, blah, blah. And it still didn't take away any of my enjoyment of this film, this fucking iconic movie. And you go, how can, and I think about horror movies and I go, are they iconic? And I'm like, well, The Thing is one of my favorite movies. So yeah. Sometimes some of these movies are great and fun and they have their sentimental and nostalgic value. And if you're all about horror movies, then, and you don't give a shit about period pieces or comedies, if this is the genre you love, then this is, probably one of your high up there movies too. To me, just in general, this is just an iconic movie. And I'm really glad I finally got to talk about some of this stuff. And I'll probably be kicking myself later for not mentioning some of the other stuff, like how they find the father in the end, right? Or when Dewey's on top of Courtney Cox in the woods, and she's like, is this what you're looking for? Talking about the car. And he's like, looks right at her. She's not even looking at him. He's like, my whole life. Great dialogue, great direction, great performances from almost everybody. Everybody was having a blast, and it set off a trend that is still felt today. There's a new Scream movie coming. Who knows? Maybe it'll be, I don't know when that movie's coming out. I've stopped watching trailers for the most part, but I know it's coming. Will this be the one where everybody, spoilers, dies? I don't know. But all I know is that when I'm watching it, I'm going to be praying that they don't. Just like I pray every single time I watch this, that poor Drew Barrymore doesn't die at the beginning of this, and every time she does, and every time my heart breaks, every single time she dies, I die a little too, because it's just so painful. And well done. Well done, Wes Craven. May you rest in peace, sir. And well done, Kevin Williamson, and everybody else involved. So I want to thank everybody for watching this review. If you've made it this far, holy shit. If you've made it this far, you better like what I'm saying. Because if you like this review, please hit the like button, comment, share, subscribe, and the bell for all notifications. Otherwise, if for some reason you didn't like any of this and you just are one of those people who actually doesn't mind listening to somebody else's opinion, even if they hate it, well, we can give you back the last hour of your life. So if you did like this, please put on shades, look away from the camera. If you've got a sensitivity to light, get the fuck out of the room, as we're going to give these people a better memory. And we'll see you on episode 8. Monkey shines, everybody. Bye. And here's a little message from Randy. Have a good night, everybody.
Number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.